Xander Steele didn't hesitate. He dropped to his knees on the hot asphalt, hands moving automatically, heart pounding in his ears as he tilted the little boy's chin back and gave him his first breath. "Please," he breathed, pressing down on the boy's chest. "Come on, kid. Stay with me." Traffic was frozen on the highway exit ramp, horns blaring behind him, but none of it mattered. The boy, maybe 5 or 6, had darted into the road chasing a soccer ball. Xander saw the car swerve too late. He'd been 2 cars behind, his old pickup rattling, his daughter in the back seat screaming. He'd pulled over and sprinted before the boy's body even stopped rolling. Another breath. Another round of compressions. "Come on, buddy, you're okay, just come back," Xander said, voice cracking. Then a cough. The boy's chest jerked. Xander froze, leaning down just as the kid started crying. "Oh, thank God," Xander whispered, brushing the boy's hair back gently. You're okay." Someone shouted from the sidewalk, a woman's scream, "Nico." Xander turned. She was running full speed, heels in hand, her designer blazer flapping behind her like wings. Her face was wild with panic, but even beneath the fear, she was beautiful. Striking. Her dark hair spilled out of a tight bun, and her eyes locked on the boy as she dropped beside them, pulling him into her arms. "Nico, baby, look at me, mommy's here." She was sobbing now, clutching her son, kissing his cheeks, murmuring thank yous to the sky. "He's okay," Xander said quietly, backing up a step. She looked at him, then really looked at him, and for a moment, something flickered in her gaze. Shock, gratitude, confusion. "You," she started, voice hoarse. "You saved him." Xander nodded once. "I'm no doctor." "Just new CPR." She stared at him. Her eyes were glassy, but she was trying to stay composed. "Thank you. I don't know how to," she broke off, hugging her son tighter. "I turned around for 1 minute." 1 minute. Xander knelt again, checking Nico's pulse one last time, brushing a scrape from his forehead. "He's lucky. That could have gone a lot worse." "I'll call an ambulance," she said quickly, fumbling for her phone. "He needs to be checked." Xander stood. "I'll stay till they get here." "You don't have to know," she said, looking up at him. "Please, I want you to stay." He hesitated. His daughter, Nova, was still in the truck, wide-eyed and scared. He turned, gesturing. She hopped out and ran toward him, grabbing his hand. "Daddy, is he okay?" she whispered. "He's okay, sweetheart," he said softly, squeezing her hand. Nico looked up, blinking groggily. "Mommy." "I'm here, baby," the woman said, holding him like she'd never let go. "You're safe now." The ambulance pulled up moments later. Paramedics swarmed around them. Nico was lifted onto a stretcher, his mother going with him. Before she stepped into the ambulance, she turned to Xander. "I'm Delilah Grant," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "I owe you everything. Please, I want to thank you properly." Xander shook his head. "You don't have to do that." "I want to," she insisted. Her eyes darted to Nova, then back to him. "Please, let me," he hesitated. "Xander Steele." She gave a small nod. "Xander, I'll find you." Then the doors closed and she was gone. 2 days later, Xander was back at the auto shop, covered in grease, elbow deep in the engine of a '98 Chevy with a busted transmission. "Dad," Nova called from the front, "someone's here." He wiped his hands on his jeans and stepped out into the sunlight. Delilah Grant stood there, dressed in a simple white blouse and jeans, but still somehow looking like she belonged on a magazine cover. Her eyes lit up when she saw him. "You weren't easy to find," she said, stepping forward, "but I meant what I said." Xander blinked. "You tracked me down. I asked the police who filed the report. They had your name. I'm very persistent." He chuckled, surprised. "Yeah, I can tell." She glanced around the shop. It was small, just 3 bays, 2 lifts that constantly broke down, and a coffee pot that hadn't worked since winter. The sign out front was faded. Rent was overdue again. "Is this your business?" she asked. "Yeah, I run it with a buddy. We take turns fixing cars and chasing parts." Her expression softened. "You saved my son's life, Xander." "I want to repay you." "You don't have to do that." "I want to," she repeated. "Dinner, my treat, tomorrow night." He blinked. Dinner, she smiled, a little crooked. You're not seriously going to turn down a free steak after what you did. Xander rubbed the back of his neck. Well, when you put it like that. And bring Nova, she added, glancing down at the girl. I'd love to meet her properly. Nova beamed. We like steak. Delilah laughed, and Xander found himself smiling back. She had this energy, sharp, magnetic, impossible to ignore. All right, he said slowly. Dinner, then? The restaurant was downtown, massive windows, white tablecloths, waiters in tuxedos. Xander hesitated as they walked in, his shirt ironed for the first time in months, Nova in her best dress. Delilah stood from the booth near the back, waving them over. She looked breathtaking. Simple black dress, hair down in soft waves, a necklace that probably cost more than his truck. You clean up nice, she teased lightly as they sat. Don't get used to it, he said, half joking. They ordered. Nova and Nico clicked instantly, coloring on the kids' menus while the adults talked. So, Xander said, cutting into his steak, what do you do? Delilah hesitated. I run a company, tech development. We design software for luxury vehicles. He blinked. Wait, like, you're a CEO, she nodded slowly, watching his reaction. He whistled. Okay, that's impressive. I don't usually lead with it, she said, setting down her glass. People treat me different when they know. Xander looked her dead in the eye. I just watched you sprint barefoot across a highway for your kid. That's what I care about. Delilah's breath hitched slightly. Thank you, she said softly. He shrugged. I know what it's like raising a kid on your own. You're a single dad. Nova's mom left when she was 2. No calls, no visits, just me and her now. Delilah stared at him, something unreadable in her eyes. Then, slowly, she smiled. That's kind of amazing. Xander looked at her, really looked. She was beautiful, sure, but there was something deeper. Strength. Fire. Heart. And for the first time in a long time, he felt the stirrings of something he didn't quite recognize. Hope. Maybe even the start of something more. Xander adjusted his grip on the crate of brake pads as he pushed open the supply room door with his shoulder. The scent of oil and rust clung to him like a second skin, and his arms ached from a morning spent wrestling with a stubborn suspension system. He didn't hear the footsteps at first, just the low murmur of Nova's voice in the front office. Then another voice, softer, unfamiliar to this place. I hope I'm not interrupting anything. He turned, nearly bumping into Delilah, who stood just inside the shop, wearing sneakers and a navy trench coat that still had a faint sheen of rain on the shoulders. Her eyes flicked to the crate in his arms. I can come back, she offered quickly. Xander shook his head and set the crate down on the workbench. You're fine, just surprised me. She glanced around the shop, taking in the cracked floor tiles, the wall calendar stuck on last August, and the battered coffee machine still blinking midnight. Do you always work Saturdays? She asked, unzipping her coat. If I don't, we fall behind. My partner's out sick, so it's just me today. He grabbed a rag and wiped his hands. Everything all right with Nico? He's great, she said. Actually, he's the reason I'm here. He's been asking if he can see you and Nova again. Xander's brow lifted. Really, she nodded. He talks about what happened a lot, not in a bad way, more like he's trying to understand it, and I think he feels safer knowing you're real, not just something he dreamed. Xander considered that. Kids are smart, sometimes too smart. Delilah stepped closer. I was thinking, maybe we could take them somewhere this weekend, something low-key, a park maybe. He crossed his arms. You sure you're all right with that? You don't strike me as the playground type. Delilah gave a short laugh. I'm not, honestly, but Nico lights up when he talks about Nova, and you. Her gaze held his for a moment, unflinching. It would mean a lot to him. He nodded once. All right, Sunday? Sunday's perfect. She looked past him at the open hood of the car he'd been working on. You've got your hands full here. I'm used to it. Her gaze lingered. You ever think about hiring someone else, expanding? He gave a low laugh. Sure, right after I win the state lottery. Delilah's mouth curved, but she didn't laugh. I know someone, he's a grant advisor. Helps small businesses get funding. Would you be open to talking to him? Xander stiffened slightly. You don't have to do that. I'm not offering handouts, she replied. You've built something here, I just think it deserves a fighting chance. He studied her. She wasn't pitying him. Her voice held sincerity, not charity. I'll think about it. Good, she said, pulling her coat closed again. I'll text you the park address. Delilah, he said before she turned. She looked back. You didn't have to come here in the rain, thank you. Her expression softened. You've already done more for us than you realize. As she left, the bell over the door jingled faintly. Nova peeked out from the office. Was that Nico's mom? Yeah. Can we really go to the park with them? Xander picked up the wrench again. Looks like we are. On Sunday, the park was alive with families. Children sprinted across the grass, chasing bubbles and laughter. Xander spotted Delilah near a row of benches, her coat folded neatly beside her. Nico was already halfway up the jungle gym, waving wildly at Nova. Nova darted toward him, her curls bouncing. Race you to the slide. Xander approached slowly, hands stuffed into the pockets of his jacket. Delilah turned as he neared. I didn't peg you for a park bench kind of woman, he teased. I'm full of surprises. They watched the kids together for a few moments. The air between them was quiet but not uncomfortable. Then Delilah leaned forward slightly. Can I ask you something? Sure. When you saw Nico in the road, were you scared? He didn't answer right away. The memory was still raw, jagged at the edges. I didn't think. I just moved. Afterward, yeah, I shook for an hour. She nodded, her hands clasped in her lap. I keep replaying it, if I'd held his hand tighter, if I hadn't looked away. Every second feels like a mistake. Don't do that to yourself. I have to. I can't protect him from everything, Xander, but I should have protected him from that. He turned to her. You're doing your best, and he knows you love him. That counts for more than you think. She looked at him then, really looked. There was something in her expression that hadn't been there before, not just gratitude, not just admiration, something warmer, more dangerous. You always say the right thing? I usually say the wrong thing and hope it lands okay. Delilah laughed, a low, genuine sound. Well, today, you're batting 100. The kids came running over, demanding snacks, their faces flushed from the cold. Delilah opened a tote and handed out sandwiches and juice boxes, while Xander helped Nico with his zipper. You know, she said, glancing up at him, you're good with him. I've had practice. I mean it, he's shy with most people. But not you. Xander looked down at the boy, who was currently trying to convince Nova to trade him her apple slices for a cookie. Maybe he sees a little of himself in me. Delilah tilted her head. And what do you see in me, Xander? He looked at her, meeting her gaze without flinching. Still figuring that out, but so far, a woman who doesn't back down from anything. Her breath caught slightly, but she didn't look away. Keep watching, she said. You might be surprised. As the sun dipped lower and the shadows stretched across the grass, Xander realized something unsettling. He wasn't just enjoying her company. He was starting to need it. And that scared him more than he wanted to admit. The invitation came on Tuesday evening hand, delivered in a navy envelope with gold foil lettering. Xander had just finished rinsing grease from his fingers when he found it tucked beneath the windshield wiper of his truck. He opened it cautiously, expecting a flyer or business pitch, maybe even a parking ticket, but instead, his eyes landed on a single sentence. You and Nova are cordially invited to the Grant Foundation Gala this Saturday, 7 o'clock sharp. Formal attire. Xander stared at it, stunned. The paper was heavy, the kind that didn't bend. It even smelled expensive. Is it from her? Nova asked, tugging at his sleeve. He didn't answer right away. His mind raced. A gala, him? What was he supposed to wear his one church suit from before Nova was born? He glanced down at his daughter. Looks like Delilah wants us to go somewhere fancy. Nova's eyes lit up. Will there be cake? Probably more forks than food, he muttered, but he kept the invitation. By Friday, he still hadn't decided whether to go, until a black car pulled into the lot of Steele Auto and Tire, sleek and silent. The driver stepped out and opened the back door with precision. Delilah emerged, holding a garment bag in one hand and a box in the other. "I figured you'd resist," she said, walking toward him. Xander straightened from the engine bay. "I never said I was going." "No, but you didn't say you weren't." She held the bag out. "This is for you." "I can't accept that. You didn't even look at it." "I don't need to. I don't belong at some black tie fundraiser." Delilah handed off the box to Nova, who was now eyeing it like it might contain treasure. "You belong wherever you're invited," she said simply. "And I'm inviting you." Xander rubbed his jaw. "You're really doing this. I want you there. What's it even for? This gala of yours?" She lowered her gaze for a moment, then looked back up. "It's for the Children's Trauma Initiative. We fund therapeutic recovery programs for kids who have gone through something difficult." Her voice softened. "It's personal. I started it after Nico's father passed away." Xander's posture shifted. "I didn't know." "I don't talk about it often, but it's why Saturday matters. I want you and Nova there. You're part of why I can stand up in front of those people and speak about hope." He exhaled. "All right, we'll come." Her lips parted slightly, as if surprised. "Good. I'll have the car pick you up at 6:30. That night, Nova twirled around the living room in a dark blue dress trimmed in pearl detail. The box Delilah had given her contained the dress, shoes, and even a little matching headband. Xander emerged from the bedroom 30 minutes later, adjusting the cuffs on a slate gray suit that fit like it had been tailored just for him. Nova's eyes widened. "You look like one of those guys on TV," he grinned. "Let's just hope I don't trip over myself." The car arrived on time. Soft jazz played from the speakers, and the driver offered them bottled water like it was the most normal thing in the world. Xander sat stiffly, trying not to wrinkle his pants. When they arrived, the hotel looked like a palace. Light spilled from the grand entrance, and a red carpet stretched across the pavement. Xander stepped out slowly, Nova's small hand wrapped tightly in his. The moment they walked in, Delilah was waiting. She wore a floor-length gown in deep silver, her hair swept to one side in soft waves. Her eyes landed on them, and something in her expression shifted just slightly, but it was unmistakable. Admiration. And more than a hint of something deeper, Nova ran to Nico, who stood beside a tall woman Xander assumed was Delilah's sister, based on the matching cheekbones. The kids disappeared together into the crowd of other children near the play area, supervised by uniformed nanas. Delilah approached him slowly. "You clean up terrifyingly well." He gave a wary glance around the opulent ballroom. "I feel like I should be bussing tables, not sipping champagne." "You're doing fine," she said, her voice low. "Besides, I'm glad you're nervous. It means I'm not the only one out of their element." Xander arched a brow. "You, out of your element," she laughed lightly. "I'm used to boardrooms." "Not ballrooms." Someone called her name from across the room, a man in a tuxedo with a camera crew behind him. She sighed. "Press, I have to do a quick interview before the program starts." He nodded. "I'll stay out of the way." She hesitated. "Actually, would you mind standing with me?" "Just for a moment," he blinked. "You want me in the shot." "I want you by my side." It wasn't said flippantly, it wasn't casual, it meant something. He stepped forward. "Then let's give them something to talk about." The cameras flashed. Delilah introduced the foundation, talked about healing, about courage, and then, without prompting, she turned to Xander. "This is Xander Steele. He saved my son's life." And reminded me that the most powerful acts of kindness often come from the most unexpected places. The room was silent for one long moment. Then applause broke out. Xander felt his ears burn, but he didn't move. He simply watched Delilah, who reached for his hand beneath the podium, her fingers brushing his in a quiet, grounding touch. Later, when the crowd dispersed and the speeches ended, he found her by the balcony, alone, her posture thoughtful. "You didn't have to say all that," he said softly. "I wanted to." He joined her at the railing, the city lights flickering below them. "I'm still not sure what this is," he admitted, "or where it's going. I'm not asking you to decide anything tonight, But you're asking me something. She turned toward him. I'm asking if you'd let this be real. He studied her face, the vulnerability there, not weakness but openness. I've been alone a long time, he said. Not just raising Nova, I mean really alone. So have I. He reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from her cheek. Then maybe we stop doing that. Delilah exhaled, a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Their lips met not with urgency, but with a quiet certainty that neither had expected to find in each other. And somewhere beyond the glass doors, the music played on, but neither of them noticed. The first snow of the season came quietly, blanketing the city in white just before dawn. Xander stood on the porch of his small house, mug warming his hands, watching Nova and Nico build a lopsided snow fort in the yard. Their muffled laughter floated up between gusts of wind, and despite the cold, his chest felt warm behind him. The door creaked open. Delilah stepped out, wrapping a thick scarf tighter around her neck. Her hair was braided over one shoulder, and her cheeks were flushed from sleep. I made pancakes, she said. I think I used too much cinnamon. He glanced at her, smiling faintly. They'll love it anyway. She leaned beside him against the railing. You didn't sleep much. I didn't need to. Delilah's gaze followed his toward the kids. They're good together. They are, he said, then paused. You know, Nova asked me last night if we were going to see you every weekend now. Delilah didn't answer right away. And what did you say? I told her I didn't know yet, he said. Because I don't. Delilah looked down at her gloves, flexing her fingers once. I think about it too, you know. What this is, what it could be. Xander didn't speak. He could feel her searching for the right words. I've spent years building something that made sense on paper, she said softly. Company, foundation, balance sheets. But lately, I've started wanting something that doesn't come with a quarterly report. He turned to her. What are you saying? She looked up at him, her expression clear. I'm saying I want to build something real. With someone who doesn't care about headlines or revenue or how many zeros are in my bank account. You sure you know what that looks like? He asked. Because it isn't always pretty. There are days I don't know how I'm going to keep the lights on. Days I eat cereal so Nova can have a hot lunch. Delilah didn't flinch. I'm not afraid of the hard parts. He watched her for a long moment, snow clinging to her lashes. I don't want to be someone you help, Delilah. I don't want to help you, she said evenly. I want to choose you. The front door banged open. Nova and Nico burst through, red-faced and breathless. Can we have cocoa? Nova asked, hopping from foot to foot. Xander nodded, stepping aside. Go warm up. As they disappeared into the house, Delilah followed, and he closed the door behind them. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and maple syrup. Plates were already stacked on the table, and the griddle still hissed faintly. I should tell you something, Xander said, leaning against the counter. Yesterday I got a call from someone at the Grant office, said you recommended me. Delilah set down a mug. I didn't want to pressure you. I'm not mad, just caught off guard. You don't have to take it, he shrugged. I already did. Figured it's time I stopped pretending I can do everything alone. Delilah stepped closer. You might be the strongest person I know, but even the strongest need someone beside them. There was a pause. Do you think your board would approve of you dating a mechanic with a mortgage 2 months behind? He asked, only half joking. She raised an eyebrow. Probably not, but I don't recall asking for their permission. He reached for her hand, fingers brushing hers gently. If this is going to work, it has to be real, not glitter and galas. Real, Delilah nodded. Then let's start there. The next few weeks unfolded like the kind of life neither of them had ever let themselves imagine. Not perfect, not without obstacles, but real. Xander's shop got more calls than it ever had. The Grant helped replace his outdated equipment and keep the doors open. He hired a part-time assistant, someone local who needed the work. Nova started piano lessons after school, something he'd never been able to afford before. Delilah didn't fade back into her high-rise life. She showed up. She sent Nico to public school so he could be in the same class as Nova. She helped Xander fix up the spare room when it leaked. She bought groceries without making it a production. She stayed for dinner. She learned how to change a tire badly, but she laughed the whole time. They didn't move fast. They didn't move slow. They just moved forward. And then spring came. One evening, just as the cherry blossoms started blooming along the park trails, Delilah led Xander down a path lit with lanterns. Nico and Nova were with her sister for the weekend. The air was warm with the promise of summer, and Xander had no idea why she was holding his hand so tightly. "Where are we going?" he asked as they stepped into a small clearing. "Just a little farther." Lights twinkled through the trees, and then he saw a picnic blanket, 2 wine glasses, and a record player softly spinning something old and slow. Delilah turned to him, her expression unreadable. "I used to think I had everything," she said. "But it turns out, everything doesn't mean much if you can't share it." Xander stepped closer. "You already gave me more than I ever expected." "I'm not finished." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small box. No velvet, no diamonds. Just a simple wooden case with a silver key inside. "What's this?" he asked. "The key to the lake house," she said. "The one I never use because it's too quiet. I want it to be ours. A place for the kids to grow up knowing what slow weekends feel like." Xander stared at the key, then at her. "You're serious?" "I don't want 100 parties. I want Sunday mornings, burnt toast, soccer games. I want us." He took the key, closing it gently in his palm. "I never thought I'd get this." "You didn't get it," she said. "You earned it." He pulled her in, arms wrapping around her as the record crackled behind them. She rested her head against his chest, and for a long time they just stood there beneath the trees, surrounded by nothing but the sound of wind and music. Later, as they danced barefoot on the grass, Xander whispered in her ear, "You're the best thing that ever happened to me." Delilah kissed him softly. "You're the only thing I never saw coming." And in that moment there was no past, no fear, no difference in their worlds. Just 2 people, completely, irrevocably chosen, together. Xander stood at the edge of the dock, watching ripples dance across the surface of the lake as golden afternoon light slid across the water. The lake house behind him was filled with the faint clatter of dishes and laughter. Nova and Nico were inside, helping Delilah make lasagna, or more likely, turning the kitchen into chaos. He breathed in the scent of pine and damp wood, letting it settle his thoughts. Footsteps padded softly behind him. "I was hoping you'd be out here," Delilah said, her voice low and full of something unspoken. "They're making a mess with ricotta." He turned and smiled, a real one that reached all the way through his chest. "Let me guess." "Nova's trying to convince Nico that cinnamon belongs in pasta." "She's persuasive," Delilah said, stepping beside him. They stood in silence for a few moments, the quiet between them comfortable. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She handed it to him without a word. He opened it slowly. A letterhead he didn't recognize sat at the top. He scanned it, brow furrowing. "You're selling the penthouse?" he asked, glancing up. "I listed it this morning," she said, looking out toward the lake. "It never felt like home." "This does." Xander stared at her, the weight of what she was saying settling over him. "You'd give all that up." "I'm not giving anything up," she said. "I'm choosing something better, something real." He folded the paper and tucked it into his back pocket. "You sure about this?" "I was never sure about anything until you," she replied. They walked back up toward the house together, where the windows glowed with warmth. As they stepped inside, the smell of baked cheese and garlic hit them immediately. Nico was laughing, his hands covered in flour. Nova had tomato sauce on her cheek and was trying to convince everyone that it was artistic. Delilah leaned close to Xander and whispered, "We need to work on their definition of helping." He chuckled, taking her hand. "We've got time." Dinner was loud and messy. They ate on mismatched plates, the kids interrupting every conversation with wild stories and half-finished jokes. Xander poured wine into coffee mugs because they hadn't unpacked the crystal, and Delilah didn't care. She looked more at ease than he'd ever seen her barefoot, laughing, her hair tied up with a pencil. Later, once the kids had fallen asleep curled up on the couch beneath a worn quilt, Xander and Delilah stepped outside again. The night air was crisp, and the stars above them hung low and bright. Delilah tilted her face up. "It's been a long time since I saw stars like this. You get used to quiet out here," he said, "but it never stops feeling like a gift." She took his hand, her thumb brushing the curve of his wrist. "I used to think love had to be complicated, that it had to come with conditions or strategy. But this is different. It's not easy," he said, "but it's simple. You and me, them, this place." She shook her head slowly. "Not just you and me, I want us to be a family." He turned toward her fully, heart tightening. "You mean that? I've never meant anything more in my life." He cupped her face gently, his forehead resting against hers. "Then let's make it official." Her eyes searched his. "You're serious?" "I am," he said. "I don't have a ring yet. I didn't plan this. But I've never been more certain of anything." Delilah exhaled, her voice trembling. "Then I guess we're getting married." They didn't need anything extravagant, no headlines, no 5-star ballroom, just the lake, the trees, and everyone who mattered. 3 weeks later, they held the ceremony on the back deck. Delilah wore a pale blue dress that brushed the wood planks like water. Xander wore the same slate gray suit, the one she'd given him months earlier. Nova walked down the aisle with Nico beside her, both holding wildflowers they'd picked that morning. Delilah's sister officiated. The vows were short, spoken between tears and laughter. When Xander slid the ring onto her finger, his voice cracked. "You're my home. You always will be." Delilah's answer came like a promise carried on wind. "I've spent my life chasing purpose, and then I found you. You reminded me what love looks like when it's true." They kissed beneath a sky streaked with the colors of late afternoon, and the world felt still. That night, they lit a fire in the stone hearth. The kids roasted marshmallows, and Xander played a mangled version of Twinkle, Twinkle on Nova's keyboard, while Delilah pretended to conduct. Later, after the kids had fallen asleep again, this time in sleeping bags beneath a fort of couch cushions, Delilah and Xander sat on the porch swing, wrapped in a quilt, her head on his shoulder. He looked down at her, brushing his thumb along her knuckles. "You ever miss your old life?" "No," she said softly. "Not for a second." The stars spread out above them, the lake whispering in the distance. "I used to think I wanted the world," he said. "Turns out I just wanted you." She didn't answer with words. She leaned up and kissed him, slow and deep, her fingers lacing through his. And in that moment, everything was exactly as it should be, their family complete, their hearts finally home, and the future wide open, waiting. Forever had begun.